Stand up.
Hey guys, welcome to today's show. I've got Dr. Christina Greer of Fordham University joining me today for a great conversation. And of course, you know the breaking news from yesterday. About 1:46 p.m. yesterday afternoon, we found out that President Biden had made the very difficult decision to end his campaign for president. President Biden became the first sitting president eligible for a second term to forego re-election since Lyndon Baines Johnson did it in 1968. Of course, President Biden, ailing from COVID, explained in the letter that it was in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. And then moments later, he endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as his successor, offering her, quote, my full support and endorsement ahead of the Democratic National Convention next month. He wrote, quote, Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Donald Trump. Let's do this. Yeah, let's do it. So for today's news segment, I'll focus solely on this and the reaction to it, and I will be talking to smart people all week, including today's guest, Dr. Christina Greer. I'd love to know who you want to hear from, but I plan to talk to as many people as I can about all of what this means, and I definitely want to hear from you. I know a lot of you are frustrated, disappointed, and sad, and I know a lot of you are excited as well as the way forward. There are no emotions or feelings that are incorrect or that are wrong. There is no time, in my opinion, to lay blame and build resentment. There's always a lot of mistakes to be made that have been made, but the past is the past, and we've got just over 100 days before Election Day and the Democratic National Convention coming up. My hope is that this creates a tremendous amount of excitement for people who weren't excited, frankly, especially young folks. Some of the most notable endorsements immediately of Kamala Harris: Bill and Hillary Clinton, Senator Patty Murray, the highest-ranking woman in the Senate, Representative Jim Clyburn, the leaders of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Congressional Progressive Caucus, and the Congressional Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, Senators Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, Mark Kelly of Arizona, Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Congressman Steny Hoyer, Maryland, Adam Schiff of California, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who a lot of people are saying will be her pick for VP, and the powerhouse fundraisers at Emily's List. Conspicuously, President Barack Obama chose not to endorse Kamala Harris in his statement, so I'm sure we'll see that from him soon. Maybe not, but I think we will. Others who refrained from naming Harris or outright called for an open nominating process included former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who praised Biden but said nothing about his successor, Congressman Lloyd Doggett, the first lawmaker who called on Biden to step aside, Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada, who's facing a difficult re-election, Representative Elizabeth Slotkin of Michigan, who is in a tough Senate race of her own, Senator Bernie Sanders, who pushed back strongly on calls for Biden to step aside, Congresswoman Susan DelBene of Washington is trying to retake the House majority in the fall. Those people refrained from naming Harris or outright called for an opening nominating process. It looks like Joe Manchin is floating a possible attempt to run and get nominated as a Democrat. You find me a Joe Manchin voter, and I will fight that person, but I really think that's a long shot. The Republican reaction, well, Trump's initial reaction, when a word was very Trump-like. He only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement, he wrote on Truth Social minutes after the announcement. We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we'll remedy that damage he has done very quickly. So he savaged Biden. You know, he didn't do the classy thing. Obviously, he just went right after him because he's a piece of shit, of course. J.D. Vance says Joe Biden has been the worst president of my lifetime. Kamala Harris has been right there with him every step of the way. She owns all of these failures. She lied for nearly 4 years about Biden's mental capacity, saddling the nation with a president who can't do the job. Well, you know, that's your opinion, J.D. Vance, and you're a hollow barrel, so you don't really have any opinions of your own. I'm sure somebody else wrote that for you. But nonetheless, the president certainly did do the job. Potentially, arguably, historians will say the best job any one-term president did in our lifetime. And you're seeing this talking point or argument that those who knew that President Biden's mental capacity, cognition was suffering, that didn't say anything, and that it's a scandal. Well, I don't think that dog hunts either. I don't really think that's going to stick at all, that it's a scandal that people knew that he was old and didn't say anything. By 4:51 p.m. yesterday, the change was official. Biden for president officially renamed itself Harris for president. And now all eyes, ladies and gentlemen, are on Kamala Harris, who in an initial statement, of course, thanked President Biden for his extraordinary leadership as president of the United States and for his decades of service to our country. She wrote, "I am honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination." Those last words, to earn and win this nomination, obscured some huge questions about what exactly will come for the next Democratic Party, according to Politico. The vast majority of Democratic delegates who are pledged to Biden do not automatically redound to Kamala Harris, apparently. But she is getting the money, the money that the Biden-Harris campaign has. And Mark Elias yesterday, who is probably one of the most influential Democratic legal experts, the founder of Democracy Docket, he tweeted, "Before the media gets rolling, let me be clear. The Democratic nominee for president will be on all 50 state ballots. There is no basis for any legal challenge, period." So I feel like that answers a couple of questions about the way forward. And now here are some of my favorite tweets that I shared yesterday when this news was breaking. D.L. Hughley tweets, "One way to make sure they teach black history is to keep making it." Kamala Harris, 2024. Legal expert Andrew Weissman, "That a talented black female former prosecutor is now opposing Trump is cosmic justice." Tom Nichols, "Very few men have had the strength of will to refuse another chance at the presidency. Joe Biden is a hero." Wajad Ali, "A black Indian woman, a daughter of immigrants, and a former prosecutor standing up to a Bulgarian racist, bully, criminal rapist, and wannabe dictator who quotes Hitler. Nothing would be sweeter for Kamala Harris, of all people, to defeat Trump at the polls." Allison Gill writes, "I know a lot of folks are angry right now, but it's time to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get to work for Kamala Harris. The women are coming in November." Ellie Mistal sounding positive. "Fuck it. I'm excited. Pissing your pants over electing a black AAPI woman president ignores the fact that we could elected black AAPI woman president." David Rothkopf, "Kamala Harris is going to be America's first woman president, and she will get there by defeating the most anti-woman ticket in American history." Dan Savage writes, Joe should pardon Hunter on the way out the door." And there's now a very real possibility that Vice President Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump debate, and she will eat him alive, I think. And let them all make their horribly sexist and racist comments about Kamala Harris. I think it'll only alienate them further from women voters. They've already gone too far, and it's only day one. I saw a lot of that already. Rick Wilson tweeted, "Joe Biden did something today that the autocrats, dictators, and the rest of the oppressive leaders in the world would never do. He put country over party and power. Donald Trump tried to violently overthrow an election. Biden stepped aside to save one from a future tyrant." And I like this from Mike Jollett, who wrote, "I can't think about Joe Biden without tearing up a little. This man ran for president 5 times and lost, then enthusiastically backed Obama and played the establishment number 2 to the greatest leader of his generation. He wanted to run for president in 2016, but couldn't because his son Beau died and he was too racked with grief. So he comes back in 2020, saves the country from Donald Trump, and despite being a career centrist, proceeds to have the most pro-union, pro-working class administration in 80 years. He pulls the country out of COVID, pulls us from the economic disaster of Trump into the best economy in the world. He's then betrayed by the media class and has to drop out because he's too old for them. He steps down for the good of the country and immediately turns around and full-throatedly endorses the first black woman presidential candidate finalist in U.S. history. This man, Joe Biden." So I like that. I like a lot of what Mike had to say. I don't know if he was betrayed by the media class and dropped out because he's too old for them. I'm not sure that I agree with that per se, but I know many of you might agree with that sentiment, so I wanted to share that. And you know what? One more. I thought this was pretty good from Shannon Watts of Moms Demand Action, tweeting to her class of white women. Shannon writes, "Fellow white women, I've spent the last decade organizing you, and I know firsthand the impact that you have when you use your economic and political power for good. This must be the election when the majority of us help elect the first woman, a black woman president. That means do the work. It's not enough to just send a donation, host a fundraiser. It's not enough to just vote, join door knocking and phone banking events every week. It's not enough to support the VP silently. Push back on every person who tells you a black woman can't get elected. Have the conversations. You are the best messenger to convince other white women who vote for and why. Your relationships with your white family members and your friends are fertile ground for transformation and conversion, so start persuading. Use your privilege for good. Tap into the resources you can access and unleash them to help the VP. Can you get a rally permit? Can you rent a venue? Can you become an influencer online or in your community? Think about all the ways you can use your access to help elect Kamala Harris. Be in it for the long haul. This doesn't end when we elect the VP. We need to keep at it the day after we win. As Alice Walker said, activism is my rent for living on the planet. It should be clear by now that none of us can ever afford to stay on the sidelines ever again. Vote accordingly. I'm talking to you, white moderate and GOP women. Time again, too many of you vote against your own interests and against the interests of black women because the white supremacy is your own interest. Voting for the VP is in everyone's best interest. As Brittany Packnett Cunningham has said, your whiteness will not save you from what the patriarchy has in store for you. Electing the VP will help save you and heal the nation. Let's go. Yeah, I really like that. I wanted to share Shannon Watt's comments as well, and I did on my Twitter feed. I shared much of that. So if you want to go find it, check me out at Pete Dominic on Twitter if you're still there. All right. Coming up, I have a great conversation with Chrissy Greer, which though it took place before this announcement, I still think it's super relevant. I think we knew this was going to happen, and I really think you're going to love that conversation. But first, here's some sound from yesterday in reaction to this huge, huge news that President Biden has decided not to run for re-election and endorsed Kamala Harris as vice president. Let's start with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC yesterday, shortly after the news broke.
They have been so sure. President Biden, perhaps cannily, waiting until the supremely self-confident Republican side locked in their ticket. Waiting until Trump picked the most radical, the most ideologically extreme, and even eccentric choice for his running mate. Waited until that was locked in, and then today, 1:46 p.m., boom. Today, Donald Trump's remarkable recent run of political good luck came to an end with a crash. The old man in the race now is Donald Trump, 78 years old and only occasionally coherent, with a record as president that is viewed by historians as the worst in the history of the country, a tenure that ended in violence. And he refuses to promise that there won't be more violence to come from his supporters. He is the old man in the race by a mile. Dragging that legacy from what happened the last time he was in office, and now a national abortion ban and maybe his own prison sentence with him to the polls. And as of today, we know that his opponent will not be a man older than him. As of today, we know his opponent will be a 59-year-old former prosecutor, attorney general, U.S. senator, and vice president to Joe Biden, who cemented his legacy today with a decision that will go down in history as one of the most selfless, patriotic sacrifices of any sitting president ever. 1:46 p.m. Joe Biden changed everything today in an instant.
All right. There you go, Rachel Maddow. And now here's Jasmine Crockett talking to Joy Reid. Jasmine Crockett spoke apparently to the vice president last night.
Do you want to tell us anything about that call with the vice president?
So just so that everyone is clear, I was never one of those leaky people. So no, I have nothing to say about my phone call with the vice president, other than what I'm sure the American people already know, which is that I stand 10 toes down with Vice President Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. I made it very clear very early. If Joe is out, there is only one person that I will be working for. So this idea of throwing out Joe Manchin and all these other people, listen, if y'all decide to go any other way, have fun with that. But the only person that I will get out there and break my back for and campaign for and believe in, who is capable and qualified, is Vice President Kamala Harris.
All right, Jasmine Crockett yesterday on MSNBC. Now here is former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh reacting to this news.
How worried do you think Donald Trump will be by this turn of events?
I think he's scared to death for a couple reasons. Trump is a bully. He's a coward, but he's always had trouble with strong women. He always struggled with Nancy Pelosi. I think that scares him. Look, the whole campaign has been banking on running against Joe Biden. They built their entire campaign to run against 81-year-old Joe Biden. They tried to keep Biden in the race. Kamala Harris is a wild card. So I think they're going to struggle immensely to run against her.
All right. Now, here is Republican Stephen Miller, the vampire who worked in the Trump administration, a gargoyle-like fascist melting down on Fox News last night.
They held a primary. People people, they had ballots. They filled out circles. They went to the voting booths. They spent money on advertisements. And as President Trump said, the Republican Party spent tens of millions of dollars running against Joe Biden. Now they just woke up one morning and said, never mind, we're canceling the entire primary. We're getting rid of our candidate, and we're pretending the election has never even happened, and we're going to let donors handpick a new nominee.
And apparently Sean Hannity couldn't think of any major reason to criticize Kamala Harris, but he did come up with this.
She wants to ban plastic straws. I love my plastic straw. I hate those paper straws. Anyway, good one. All right. David Axelrod was on CNN last night, the former Obama administration and campaign chair, one of the first people to call for Joe Biden to step down, and received all kinds of criticism for it. Well, here he is.
You know, it was I was very sad, honestly. I think it was necessary. It's important. It's an incredibly important decision and difficult decision that he made for the country, but not the final chapter that he imagined, and not maybe the final chapter that he deserved. But there is a real focus on the question that he has put in front of people again and again and again, and that is who and how can the Democratic Party defeat Donald Trump? And I think in that regard, the party took a step forward today, and the president recognized it and did the hardest thing you can do and stepped aside.
There you have it. Classy, I think. And now, finally, here is CBS News report last night, the nightly news. They did a longer report, but I included almost 4 minutes of their coverage of Kamala Harris, who she is, where she comes from. And I thought it was pretty good, so I wanted to share this with you, give you some more context about the next president of the United States, the first woman ever. I am so excited for that day. Oh, and by the way, for you, those of you who are on TikTok, doesn't this reporter's voice sound exactly like that TikTok voice? Anyway, more importantly, Kamala Harris.
In 2003, underdog Kamala Harris won the district attorney election for the city of San Francisco.
Most important things don't come easy.
Her victory marked the start of a political career that certainly would not come easy. Kamala Devi Harris was born in 1964 in Oakland, California. Her mother, Shamala Gopalan, was from India, and her father, Donald Harris, from Jamaica.
I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me, including don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are.
She grew up in Berkeley, California, where her parents were both academics and activists who participated and raised their children within the civil rights movement. Harris graduated from Howard University in 1986.
I chaired the Economic Society. I was on the Howard debate team.
She then graduated from law school from the University of California, Hastings in 1989, and public service was her calling.
If you want to pass Proposition K, you're going to have the exact opposite effect.
After serving 7 years as the district attorney of San Francisco, in 2010, she was elected attorney general for the state of California. She broke barriers as the first Black and South Asian woman to hold the position, which she did for 6 years before she stepped into national politics.
Attorney General Kamala Harris just made it official. She is running for U.S. Senate.
We know this is the first open Senate seat we've had in almost a quarter of a century.
In 2016, she ran for Senate in California, and she won.
I intend to fight for truth and transparency and trust.
And it didn't take long for her fight to be felt in Washington, D.C.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that?
With her insistent inquiries and commitment to progressive policies, presidential buzz was quickly building around her, and she made it official in 2019.
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
Her announcement rally in Oakland drew nearly 20,000 people, and her campaign quickly gained momentum.
And those folks don't want a wall, they want a paycheck. So So let's be clear about what should be the priorities of this administration.
Harris's most notable moment came during a primary debate with Joe Biden over his opposition to federally mandated busing.
You also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
But her campaign soon began to stall. Her record as a prosecutor in California at times was at odds with the direction of the party. And before long, the momentum she had was gone.
It is with deep regret, but also with deep gratitude, that I am suspending our campaign today.
However, she would soon be on a new campaign.
I have no doubt that I picked the right person to join me as the next Vice President of the United States of America, and that's Senator Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris!
Just months after her own campaign fell apart, Kamala Harris was on the presidential ticket with Joe Biden.
I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America.
All right, there you go. Thought that did a pretty good job putting this together at the last minute, trying to throw out everything I had planned for you because of this news that broke around 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Hope you appreciated it. If you did, patreon.com/Pete Dominick. I cannot do it without your support. I'm here each and every day covering the news from what I call Earth One, which is our reality, where Kamala Harris will be, hopefully, the nominee. It's not official, obviously, yet, but I think it would be political suicide for anybody to come out against her, and anybody that would have a strong case to make for their candidacy has almost overwhelmingly supported her, including, I didn't mention, AOC, Pete Buttigieg, and more that broke throughout the day. It was a very, very impressive launch, day one for Kamala Harris. I think it's fair to say that the stars aligned, at least on Sunday. We'll see what happens today and the rest of the week. I've got a whole bunch of guests lined up to talk to me today. I'm going to talk to people in short bursts and try to share that for tomorrow's show. Let me know who you want me to talk to. I want to thank Shannon for her email. Longtime listener Shannon White said, "Hey, Pete, just speaking from my heart here, Trump is going down. Let's do it, ladies. First woman president, I am on board. My daughter asked so many questions tonight. Can a woman really become president? How old do you have to be? All questions that made me happy. Let's do this and let's go. It's just so good." Shannon, I'm with you. All right, now to my great conversation with Dr. Christina Greer of Fordham University, where she is a PhD, a political scientist, an author, a podcaster, and a commentator. You've seen her on television often, where I actually met Chrissy Greer so many years ago. She has obviously become a really good friend of mine and called me out for not having enough women on the show last week. And so she was the first person I wanted to go to. Like I said, we talked before the news broke, but I think this whole conversation is really relevant. She's the co-host of FAQ NYC, host of the Blackest Questions on the Greer Black Podcast Network. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Christina Greer joins me from London, where she's teaching for the month right now. Okay, there she is. I've just told you all about her. It has been too long, but she's so super busy. As a matter of fact, she's at her flat in London, hanging out with, hobnobbing with all kinds of upper crusties, including NBA star Jason Tatum, apparently. Chrissy, welcome back. Why are you in London? What are you teaching? Dr. Greer, excuse me.
Hi. I'm teaching at Fordham's London campus for the summer. I'm totally not hanging out with Jason Tatum. I just happened to bump into him as I was leaving a pub. He was not leaving a pub. I was leaving a pub.
And he was like, Chrissy, Dr. Greer?
He was just meandering around London with some people. And my cousin was like, oh my God. She's from Tallahassee. And so I think people who live in major cities, we're used to seeing celebrities. So I was like, oh, there's Jason Tatum. So I snagged a picture of him with her and she was very happy. And I thought, as a diehard Knicks fan, I thought I was very classy. I said, congratulations on your championship. Go Knicks.
Oh, you said go Knicks to the Boston Celtics player walking around London.
I sure did.
Is he the thing with the basketball players is that they're easier to identify because they're very tall. Is he a very tall man? You walked out and he stuck out like a sore thumb as a tall man?
Listen, I've been on safari before. It literally is like you turn a corner. It's, oh my gosh, there's like a giraffe right there. Like they are very tall. And he was walking with people who were normal size. So it just made him look like
just
a very tall giraffe.
Should only hang out with
the city of London.
Only hang out with people your height.
I'm always curious when people go to other countries, and because like America does have, by and large, like very tall people, sure, and like very diverse sizes of people, but he definitely stuck out. So yeah, go Knicks.
What are you teaching?
An intro to urban politics class. This is actually, I'm not teaching British students. I'm teaching Fordham students who chose to go to summer school, but instead of doing summer school in New York, they've chosen to do summer school in London. So it's Fordham professors teaching Fordham students just across the pond. It's been great. And I have Rose Hill students and Lincoln Center students. And one of my students is a student I taught 2 years ago in intro.
Meaning the two campuses, politics. The two separate campuses of Fordham is what Chrissy is referring to, for those of you who are not familiar. But so why do you teach it with some kind of British influence of somehow?
No, I just teach it with a British accent. That's all.
You just
teach it. No.
Come in and out of your accent. That's just Dr.
Like
Greer is
just
weird.
Flipping it out of a British accent. No, it's partially London, partially New York. It's not heavy on theory. The way I teach it, if we were in New York, it would be very New York focused. This is like a New York / London focus. But we went to the British Museum. We had a whole day together talking about capitalism and colonialism. Students had to choose objects that they identified with, and then we came back together as a class and they showed us what they chose and why. And obviously the student whose family's from Greece, like she felt very strongly. And I warned her before we went to the museum. I was like, this might be emotional. You're going to see whole buildings from Greece inside of a building. And then we saw the mayor have a Q&A. So we went to City Hall, beautiful, modern, very modern building, and saw the assembly, 25 people, grill him for an hour and a half and answer questions about transportation and accessibility and budgets. And they had an election here on July 4th, which now the mayor's Labour Party is now in power, which they have not been in 14 years. So there's a lot that he wasn't able to do as mayor. And now he possibly can, because think of it as like unified government, right? So like a Democratic mayor having a Democratic president. We've made some comparisons that way, thinking about our cities. And I just happen to have some students who are from New York State. So we can talk about Buffalo and Albany and Westchester and Long Island and the 5 boroughs. Because I have students.
You skipped Syracuse, where I'm sitting right now, my childhood bedroom, but that's fine. What is the ethnic diversity like in London?
Quite large. I went to school here 25 years ago for a year. I went to the School of Oriental and African Studies, and the food was mid. I was also drinking Guinness every day because I didn't have much money. So it was like either you drink or you eat. And I was like, I can do both. I'll just drink Guinness. But it was a lot of fish and chip shops, and that was it. And the cuisine in London it's almost like the colonies have come home. First of all, the amount of Lebanese food I'm eating is criminal.
That's great. That's great.
I'm going to come back yet again 100 pounds bigger having been in London. Eating amazing Indian food and Caribbean food. I was in Brixton the other day with all the black folks. So like the cuisine is great. I've had some solid Jamaican food, tons of Lebanese food, some really great Indian food, really great Thai food. So the culinary scene I think London still gets this bad rap about like, their food is terrible, but Italian food is great. It's a global city.
Yeah.
They also have this like great steak restaurant chain that's like ridiculous called Flatiron that
I had no idea. I've not spent any time there a day or something. And I just think about British politics. I don't know much about that either than European politics and Brexit being over, immigration fears, and knowing that people are always demonizing Muslims in London, and just wondering about how now that they've taken this vote, they've moved back. Not they can't ever get out of Brexit maybe, but what the temperature is there over immigration, it seemingly being such a primary issue to demagogue for the British. Right?
Yeah.
European.
The quintessential questions that we always have, which is who's really British, right? We always have these who's really American conversations.
I am. Hulk Hogan is.
Oh, Lordy. And to think I used to like Hulk Hogan. Yeah. I was a big WWF fan.
Me too. If Ricky the Dragon Steamboat puts his finger on the scale for Trump, I may question my own vote.
I like Junkyard Dog because he was black, and Andre the Giant, like that whole crew, and Ric Flair and Randy.
All right, back to immigration. I did not want to bring. I knew you'd go there.
I was a huge fan of The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling too. Like
I watched that too. By the way, just for listeners, Chrissy is actually on the top turnbuckle right now. She's about to jump down and land on the immigration question I'm asking. She's doing the junkyard dance.
We come from the street. We come from the city. We come from a world where there is no pity.
Wow,
Spanish
folks,
Americana, all of them. I loved it.
Unbelievable tangent. The greatest departure that's ever been taken here on the show.
I contain multitudes, as they say.
I know. This is why we love you and talking to you. Now,
so being in London, immigration's wild, right? Because at the same point, they're having these similar conversations. Who gets to be American? Don't forget, the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, famously got into it with Donald Trump on Twitter because essentially he's like, your racist vitriol won't be tolerated. And essentially Donald Trump was like, we wouldn't let you in the country. There are obviously lots of, we would probably call them like the British MAGA version, right? They don't like the fact that a lot of the colonies are coming back to England. And you can see this diversity, not just obviously in the cuisine, but you see it in the school systems. You see it in changing neighborhoods. And we're British. Honey, we're British too, right? Like the British Empire was a lot of places. And now we're just back in this cold, rainy rock and let's figure it out. Seeing the assembly, there was quite diversity. I saw quite a few people of color. They had some women. Saw some people with the kind of lanyards with the pride flag. So I think that there's some diversity in that realm. I think that's just this push-pull of a lot of major cities where it's like housing was brought up quite a bit during the mayor's Q&A. So who gets to live in a city? Is there enough housing, affordable housing, and not like the Jay-Z Barclays style affordable housing, which is not affordable at all. Can't stand it.
I don't even know what you're talking about there, but I want to get into that at some other point.
He promised affordable housing when he was like the face of putting Barclays in the middle of Brooklyn, and the affordable housing is absolutely not affordable. It's like a 1-bedroom for $3,000. They're like not even a 1-bedroom. And so he promised all of that. And so it's like the people who were pushed out can't even afford to live there anymore.
Oh, that's not great.
Leading jobs that are at Barclays, they're not guaranteed those jobs. So he was like the face of it for all these billionaires to do what they always wanted to do, but they needed a black face to co-sign it. And Jay-Z was more than willing to do that with his 0.01% ownership. But he made it seem like, oh, this is our deal. And like Brooklyn's going to come up. No, they're not. Black people
has he been rightly criticized for that publicly by?
No, here's the thing. Black capitalism is still capitalism.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's the new?
A lot of people are just like so proud that, oh, wow, and he's from Marcy Projects and he made it. Yeah, but he's still doing the same things as the super rich white dudes do to poor black people. It's just they used him as the black face to do it to poor black people.
Are you familiar
with that? If I see Jay-Z, it's like literally on site. It is literally earrings off. I'll risk it all. I'll be Solange in the elevator 2.0.
Wow. That's really fascinating to hear you share that emotion about how you feel about that situation. 15 cents on the dollar. Are you familiar with that new book?
No. What's that?
How Americans Made the Black-White Wealth Gap. I'd love to see you talking to the authors. I interviewed the authors, but it is what you just said about black capitalism. There's a whole 2 chapters in there. It's really fascinating and really important because basically once you're being rich is being rich. You act rich, and that's the problem.
A few things. One, every policy in America is based on racism. Like people don't want to think about it, but it's like literally every single thing we can trace it back to some sort of racist policy. Like the way black communities were preyed upon. We're seeing it now with families that own property and one person sells a stake to like these like hedge fund guys and they basically take the whole property from the family. The way land is just consistently stolen, taxes, the whole thing. And it's consistent. And then you have a lot of friends. We used to always joke in grad school, Pete might say, oh, I'm struggling too. It's, yeah, but Pete's one dead grandmother away from being just fine, right? Because of the racist practices of what happened with my grandparents versus your grandparents. Your grandma dies and like her house is now worth $1 million, where it's like my grandparents were like redlined and couldn't buy until 30 years after your grandparents and their house wasn't valued at the same amount. And we see appraisers still. Like I bought my place a few years ago and the running joke is I have black art everywhere and everyone's, girl, you need to take everything off the walls if you ever sell this place because you'll get $2 for this Brooklyn apartment because we know black places don't sell at the same, like they're not appraised at the same rates. Like this is 2024. This isn't your grandma versus my grandma. It's like, it's literally your house will go for more than my house. Purely we're next door neighbors just because you're white and I'm black. So all of these things taken together create this substantial wealth gap. Like when black people die, by and large, like the community comes together and we bury our loved ones. Whereas like when a lot of white people die, not all, but a lot, it's, oh, not only do you not have to pay for the funeral, like you get money when people die, as opposed to putting out money. So it's grad school, these people are like, oh, times are hard. I'm like, girl, you're really about to have $500,000 overnight. You don't have any college loans. You're going to have a down payment for a house. You're going to be able to buy your house a smooth decade before me because your parents are going to give you money for this house because grandma died. Yeah. And you don't have any debt from school, et cetera, et cetera. And you went to a public school because you were in an area where the public schools were actually great.
Or this public school, or that public school.
All the things.
That's really interesting to hear you just off the cuff explain the entire in history here. And for the white people who did not inherit anything when their grandparents died, she's not talking about you.
So settle down.
So take it easy.
But you know what? But think of it this way. When John Edwards was like, my dad worked in the paper mill. I was like, your dad got to work inside the paper mill. Right. My grandfather wasn't allowed to work.
Right. There's always something. If it's not,
he had to work outside the paper mill. Yeah. And he got half the money doing the harder job than his white colleagues. So yes, even if you're like, we worked here, it's great. You sure did. Wonderful. Good for your family. But let's be clear, there were racist practices that still made it unequal by and large, because this is what this country is, and we know it. So let's not pretend.
You are Dr. Christina Greer, the political scientist, your PhD in, I forget exactly what, but that doesn't matter. The point is how you're seen is by all of your friends, people like me and everybody else, you're seen as Dr. Politics, meaning when there's a political question, anybody who knows you or has your phone number is like, hey, Christy, what do you think of this? I luckily do it and tape it. But my specific question to start is, and I wonder if other people are asking this, and if it's even a fair, I guess it's fair. Of course it is. You're there. How is American news taken there? Can you speak for in generalities, or is the internet and everybody talks about the same stuff no matter where you're at?
What's frightening
the debate, the assassination attempt, those two things in particular. I wonder how they're.
So what's been frightening for me is that when I meet people, obviously I'm like, oh, hi, how's it going? So like, oh, where are you from? And it's obviously, I don't put on my British accent. So people know that I'm American. What I have been surprised at is like meeting just regular people, like the guy that came to check my thermostat and like another person who came to drop off some things in my flat. And so when they say, oh, what are you doing here? Why I'm here for so long, blah, blah, blah. I'm teaching. Oh, you're teaching politics. Get it. So we ultimately get around to a lot of times I like to just lie and be like, oh, I'm a second grade teacher, because that just prevents a lot of.
Yeah, sure. But they'd still ask you questions about those kids.
Right. So when I've been telling the truth, I'm here to teach a politics class. And what I have been so surprised at from like people in the pub, people wherever, the Donald Trump talking points are so effective. So it's like, your president's really old. That is a fact. Sure. And it's like, why don't you guys like Donald Trump? He's been so successful as a businessman. He did all of these things as president. And then they just start rattling off all the things that Donald Trump keeps saying that he did, that he absolutely didn't do. And I'm like, wow, the marketing of his ideas. And this is obviously, as Brian Lehrer always says, like a totally uncertified Chrissy Greer sample. This is not a scientific experiment, but the people that I have encountered, by and large, are just like, I don't understand why you guys wouldn't want a second term of Donald Trump. Like, he seems young and energetic, and like he actually got the country moving again, and like people respect him. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And so this one guy is like a Arab cat. And I was like, you do realize he doesn't want you in the country. And if you came, he'd try and kick you out. Because he was like, I really want to move to America one day. I was like, yeah, not if Donald Trump is president again, sweetie. You're not coming. You're not welcome. And I was like, that part didn't get through. And he was like, no, what do you mean he doesn't like immigrants? I was like, wow. So like the marketing of Donald Trump isn't this like anti-immigrant, failed businessman, grifter, charlatan, convict person.
The marketing of Donald Trump, I feel like, lands differently for different people. And I'll just say that for men, and it sounds like some of the guys that you're talking to at least, like a lot of that marketing is he's like tough and cool and strong, and they're masculine and probably sexist pricks. I'm just making assumptions about their thoughts on equality or any issues, because How can they say that? How can the first thing not be abortion? Because I bet you women, no matter where they are around the world, a lot of different shades, they probably see that first. Men see the kind of masculinity and the fame and I don't know, all the shitty, awful things that men like. Is there any truth to what I just said about like the gender difference and how he lands even in foreigners that aren't paying close attention? Does the marketing reach women the same way?
I think that you are absolutely spot on, but it's interesting. The people who really want to engage me about Donald Trump are men. Women.
Well, to be fair, men want to engage you as soon as they start talking to you, I think.
No, but it's like they want to talk about, but you know what?
I'm just saying.
On this podcast.
I'm just saying.
I don't know, women are just, oh, wow, yeah, your country's wild. It's a full mess. We get it. Men are just so like, why don't people like Donald Trump? He doesn't seem like a bad guy. Now, interestingly enough, the quote unquote assassination attempt, I was in Lisbon, so I didn't get like the
right
on the ground.
You get the Portuguese. You get the Portuguese point of view.
This happened like the night of my birthday. Everything always goes on the night of my birthday. I always have a wonderful birthday, and then some big national/international
really
goes on the evening of George Zimmerman's acquitted, or something like some sort of hashtag horrible police murder has occurred. Like, it's always me having a lovely day. I'm with friends, and then someone looks at their phone like, "Oh my God!" And it's like a terrible play gone wrong.
I hope you could settle on the fact that at least you were in Lisbon with your friends and not another place. So let me ask you about that. What's the most important thing to you about that assassination attempt? And you put it in quotes. So what do you mean by that? Do you think that the boy was set up? He's a Manchurian candidate. He's a robot. He was a Alex Jones crisis actor.
I don't know. Where's Alex Jones? Having some distance from it, I'm not inundated in the same, it just seems very convenient when you look at the data, and like any presidential candidate who has like an assassination attempt tends to win the election, just from a sympathy vote standard. And just watching it in the Portuguese media, it just seemed like this like perfectly orchestrated thing. Now, that is not what I'm saying happened, but it feels very convenient in this crazy time.
Doesn't everything feel like, though, it's going his way?
Everything feels upside down.
Joe Biden's debate performance, Joe Biden gets COVID. Like, it seems like all the courts, the Supreme Court decisions, the alien cannons decision, everything goes his way. His whole effing life, things break for him, and the rest of us break because of him. But
here's an aside. I'm not a big astronomy person. A colleague of mine is, and they crack me up because they always will say something about, did you hear about Putin? And they'll be like, Scorpio.
Oh, you said astronomy. You clearly you meant
astrology. Oh my gosh.
You're not big on it. You're not big on it. I get it. So go ahead and tell me
astrology. So a colleague of mine always cracks me up because they know all of the signs of famous world leaders, past and present, right? So isn't he a Leo, right? And it's
wow.
So they're really into astrology. But there was an astrologer actually who was interviewed who said they did Donald Trump's chart. And for your listeners, I'm sure some of them do their chart. You take your birth time and your rising moon and your rising sun and all the things, and you do like an astrological chart as to when you were born and where, some people are under like a chaotic environment when they were born, others not so much. And this one astrologer said that Donald Trump's kind of astrological chart was that it's like incredible luck. Like everything will just always work out for him astrologically, like literally how the stars are aligned for him. Now, if you believe in that, you believe in that. If not, it's just like, hey, listen, is it astrology or is it Joe Biden said he'd be the bridge candidate, and then after 2020, he doesn't make a plan, and after 2022, Democrats don't force him to make a plan, and here we are with Stumblevision on the world's biggest debate stage. Is this luck for Donald Trump, or is it just, what man do you know who willingly gives up power? He said he was going to just help us get over this hump, and he'd be a one-termer. I don't know if he explicitly said it or if he implied it, but we didn't have hard conversations in 2022, which was, hey, friend, thanks for helping us through the midterms. Sorry, New York ruined it for you and you don't have unified government again. But let's start thinking of, are we going to pass the baton to this Black woman who's been your vice president the way we have in the past, the way vice presidents de facto get the nomination? Are we going to throw it into the wild and, hey, Gavin, Gretchen, Pete, whomever, rich people, you name it, it's a free for all. But we didn't do that. And so then we wait until June of the election season. A primary has already occurred, but not the convention. I think it's an important conversation to have. They're the pre-convention conversations, then they're the post-convention conversations, because that's when people have legally signed and we start printing up ballots in states. So we didn't have a lot of hard conversations that we should have had and really forcing people's hands. But I think for those of us who have ailing parents, I've talked to my therapist about this a lot, we know that there's a difference between 65 and 70. A lot of us have seen it. There's a difference between 70 and 75. And then for a lot of people, there's a difference between 75 and 80. But for some of us, we've seen there's a difference between 75 and 76. There's a big difference between 76 and 77. Like for those of us who are like with our parents. But we do know that once you hit 80, each year is a real wild card. So like we have people who can go from 80 to 85 and there's very little change. But we know that there's some people, it's like that decline from 80 to 81, 81 to 82 can be really stark. And we know that Donald Trump is a relatively like spry 78 and Joe Biden is a relatively old 81. And we have to be honest about the fact that as Democrats, we didn't have some really important, hard conversations with current elected officials, past elected officials, donors, people who were like, what are the next 2 years going to look like? What's 2024 going to look like? We know who this country is. We know that having a black woman at the top of the ticket is making a lot of people feel a lot of ways. Pete Buttigieg is fantastic at his job going on television and eviscerating Republicans. Is this country ready for a homosexual president or someone on the ticket? Let's have these conversations. We know what country this is. I have people texting me like, I want Kamala Pete. I'm like, what country do you live in? Like, are both of them qualified? Absolutely. Would both of them be able to do a fantastic job? Sure thing. I think both of them have proven they get it. But I'm like, have you met America? Because I have, and I can't really see this black woman and a man with a husband going well for a lot of these folks who like equality in theory. They just can't pull the lever for it.
So, yeah, that is the run up to where we are at now. And the question that is being asked and the conversation that's playing out is fascinating and scary and upsetting, and everybody's yelling at each other. My question is, why are all the black folks supporting Biden to stay in and all the white folks are saying he should step down and let the black woman step in? And then we're being called racist and insensitive. And I understand that black folks and women and others are going to have a lot more consequences than I ever will. I have daughters, like I'm thinking about their interests, but still, I get it. I understand that, I think, pretty well, and that's why I vote for who I vote. And I don't think Biden can win as well as Kamala can win. And black folks are very mad at me and others. And can you explain what I'm supposed to do, feel, think, and host how am I supposed to navigate this conversation? Please help.
I don't know what all black people think. But I do think that a lot of black people, we do know this country in a way that white people just keep putting on these blinders that you see on horses. I don't get it. It's like, if you don't look around,
should have seen her face.
What it is. Here's the thing. You said something that is really important. You're like, I don't think Biden can win. I think Kamala can. And I think a lot of black people are like, we know this country. We actually think that Biden has a better chance of winning because we know that a lot of people will. We call it the Bradley effect. Remember Mayor Bradley from Los Angeles, first black mayor of Los Angeles, who ran for governor, and all the polls had him leading. And then when it was election time, he lost terribly. And so everyone was afraid. And so it's called the Bradley effect in political science. Everyone was afraid that was going to happen to Barack Obama. And it didn't, right? Not once, but twice. But Barack Obama is a white man with a very different origin story than Kamala Harris. And we know that we struggle with female leadership in this country. And we definitely struggle with black female leadership in this country and the child of two immigrants. Barack Obama, don't forget, his origin story is like, I was raised by my white family and I have basically Kansas values, read white values, right? And there's a whole longer narrative that sets up Barack Obama as like the cool, attractive young male versus Hillary Clinton, who brings a truckload of baggage, right? And then we have Sarah Palin, who was a major factor, and people are like, ooh, John McCain, like, you just chose wrong. So like the winds of change were in his favor. With Kamala Harris, She's run for the presidency before. Barack Obama never had. So you didn't do the first time. You obviously can't win. People don't like you. The rumors. Don't forget, when she canceled her campaign, unprecedented. Campaigns end all the time. People go their separate ways. For some reason, for Kamala Harris, she was the worst boss ever. Let me talk to the press anonymously. But now I'm going to have all these unsubstantiated quotes in these articles.
That's right.
How terrible she is, right? We've never seen that before, but hey, here we are now. All of a sudden, the role of the vice president has been the most important role ever. Really? Because did we make these demands on Mike Pence or Dan Quayle or Al Gore even? No, we didn't. We didn't even make these demands on Joe Biden for 8 years. But now it's, what has she done as vice president? What every vice president does, play your position, which is whatever the president needs you to do. They need you to fall back. They need you to fall back. I wrote a piece in the Times in 2021 where I said, hey, Kamala, it's a trap. It's set up because they put you in charge of everything but world peace. Literally. That's right. She was in charge of COVID, voting rights, immigration, southern border. I was like, girl, and here's the thing. I was like, and if you don't succeed on these issues that we've been trying to figure out for decades, then you're going to be seen as a failure. Because Joe Biden's, I'm giving her this great portfolio because I just trust her so much. She's like, no, you're passing off stuff to the black chick. So then if it doesn't get done, guess who didn't do it? The black chick. She didn't figure out voting rights. She didn't figure out the crisis at the border. She didn't figure out our immigration conversations. She didn't figure out global COVID. What? Literally the only thing that he didn't give her at the time was Middle East peace. So and here we are. Would it be great to have Kamala Harris as a president? Absolutely. Do I know what this country is? Absolutely. Do I know how white women act? Absolutely. I went to camp. So I don't think everyone always be like, how do you know white women so well? I went to camp at a very young age. And I saw how people vote against their interests at a very young age. And if you look at the data, white women vote just like white men in presidential elections. So we can't act like they're this special class of people. They're not. They vote Republican. So we can't necessarily, and the fastest growing MAGA folks are Latinos and Asians. We can't rely on other people to do the right thing. And so this is why I think a lot of black women are like, we know this country. We know all the people in it. Because guess what? You have to know all the people in it, not just to thrive, but to merely survive in this country. Because we've been telling white folks about what was going to happen to Roe v. Wade for a good 20 years. Hold on, that's my door. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Hello? Yes. Thank you so much.
Are you going to be okay to send them?
Yes, I sent one the other day. Thank you. Sorry for the podcast.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much.
The other ones away that you just did?
No, they're just in there just in case.
You want to take them away?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, thank you.
You have a mic call next week.
Exactly. So, thank you. Have a wonderful one. So sorry.
No worries. No worries. That was such an epic, I don't want to say rant because that would be disrespectful to how much you put in that and explained it. But I don't know if you had more, but I have a quick follow-up, which is.
Well, here's the thing. I've always said this. It's from Lonnie Guinier, great. But let me get my water. Black women are the canaries in the mine. We consistently tell people of all the dangers ahead. Now, who listens to black women besides other black women? Nobody, until it's time for folks to get a cleanup woman. And then it's, oh my God, did you know that they're trying to take away Roe v. Wade? Yes, boo. We told you that 20 years ago. Oh my God, they took away Roe v. Wade. Yes, VP. We told you that. Then it's black women will save us. And we are tired. We are really tired because you don't listen on the front end and then you need saving on the back end. And so I said this on a panel last month. When I was growing up, we had this big house and we entertained a lot. And the one thing that would make my mother insane, and when I say insane, is that we've got a party at 8 o'clock. Things need to happen, right? And if you go up to this woman at 7:30 and say, what should I do? She would look at you like she was ready to throw you off the terrace. Because if you don't look around, people are coming in 30 minutes. These bathrooms need to be clean. These trash cans need to be emptied. These floors need to be swept, mopped, waxed, whatever. Whatever is not done on the list of things, you know how to throw a party. right? You know what needs to be done. So why are you asking me what needs to be done? Look around. You live here too. You host these same parties. Like, food needs to be out. Drinks, ice needs to be put together, like whatever. So I just feel Black women are at the point where it's, listen, how many times are we going to have this same party? And how many times are you going to come to me, Chrissy, political science friend, Black woman friend, what should we be doing? And it's, have we known each other this long where you're still asking? As a country, folks are still asking, and we're still hand-holding and back-rubbing and explaining what needs to be done and explaining the dangers that lie ahead. But folks don't care. I think a lot of people like the Chicken Little aspect of it and want to deal with the effects later, because deep down, they don't really think it'll affect them. You're like, I have daughters, I care about abortions. You know what? Someone who uses condoms should care about this Republican Party, because that's what's coming next. So it's not just about abortion. We're like, let's play this out to the hilt, because most white people don't understand. I'm finishing this book on Fannie Lou Hamer and like reading about all these atrocities that she went through. It's like most white people don't understand what Black people went through in this country at the hands of white people. They don't fundamentally understand the capacity of certain white people and what white people will do to destroy others and in the process destroy this country as well and the fabric of democracy. They don't get it. We get it, but they don't. So that's where the frustration is. And that's where it's, stop it. You know who this place is.
I really appreciate how perfectly you executed explaining that frustration. I think that's exactly what a lot of us need to hear. But the one thing I would follow up with is, I forget exactly what the phrase you used was, but basically it was that a reference to history. We've seen this over and over again in the past. And so my question is it different this time? Have things changed so much that almost anybody could beat Donald Trump?
I don't think almost anybody can beat Donald Trump, but I think the problem with a lot of Democrats is that they're acting like Donald Trump has already won to absolve themselves of doing the hard work. We have it's a short runway, but it's a long runway. November 5th's not tomorrow. We have several months to do things. And by do things, everybody knows that relative or that close friend who's, I'm not voting. These people, I don't like either one of them. You know those people. Hey, work on them. You know those people who are like, I'm a vote, but I'm just going to skip the top of the ticket. Work on them. There's people who are like, I'm a vote, but I'm going to vote third party because whatever. It's like, you're going to do that in Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, even any state is now going to be a swing state. So the work is making sure you have a plan and everybody in your orbit, all of your tentacles, everyone that you know has a plan to do the right thing. And that's just educating them about not just the top of the ticket, but all these important races. Guess what? J.D. Vance, as dangerous as he is, he wouldn't even be in conversation if he wasn't a senator. But in Ohio, there are lots of people who are like, oh, he won't win. It's fine. Yeah, my dad's going to vote for him. Whatever. It'll be fine. And so it's great. And now he and his billionaire problematic friends are about to just essentially buy their seat to the White House if we don't do the work. And I just think a lot of people are like, oh, fait accompli, it's done. I can't believe Trump's taken it again. Biden's old. And listen, explain to people that it's not just Joe Biden. It's an administration. Do you want grifters and corrupt folks who are just going to essentially pillage the rest of our democracy and we just get like the bones at the carcass of the bird? Or are we going to say this man is less than ideal and he should have stepped aside Clyde a long time ago and there might be a Black woman at the top of the ticket and what are you going to do about it? However, do you want your kid to have public school? Because Donald Trump's planning on gutting that. He already said he's going to fire 50,000 government employees. So it's like, good luck going to the DMV. Good luck having goods and services. Right. Like, you don't think your life's going to be affected, but like he has laid out and he's trying to distance himself from that Project 2025. But like 90% of the people who are in his administration worked on that thing. And he doesn't have the best people. He has grifters and hangers on and people who can't make it in the real world. So here they are. They're all now going to be in his administration and people are just going to buy their seats to secretarial positions and major positions.
Oh, yeah.
That
they did last time. A lot of them did last time.
Yeah, but a lot of them, but not all of them.
Not all of them.
We still had some Republicans, as problematic as they were. We still had some Republicans who were like, hey, guy, this might be a bridge too far. Jeff Sessions, we thought he was the worst. And then he at least was like, there's certain things I'm not going to do. He gets run out of town, right? Bill Barr, terrible person. But guess what? There were a few times where he was like, yeah, nah, dude, that's a bridge too far. Donald Trump will surround himself 2.0. There will be no one who believes that there's a bridge too far. It is going to be a smash and grab. Everyone's going to be like, we got 4 years to change all these laws so none of us can ever go to prison and we can make as much money as possible. And we're going to sell secrets or whatever it is to the highest bidders. And we're all just going to cash grab it because the president's going to say it's okay.
Do you think that if we
change laws to make sure that it's harder and harder for people to vote so we can just keep this grift going?
Yeah, for sure. Do you think that for those of us who believe what you're saying, that we need to actually do stuff in the next 100 days, that we should generally be focused on candidates and initiatives and turning out the vote in the so-called swing states? Should we be predominantly those of us who live in safer blue states or red states that
ain't no state safe? New York's not safe. New York's the reason why we don't have unified government.
We lost
Lee Zeldin came within 6 points of Kathy Hochul. We had 12 years of a Republican governor. We had 20 years of Republican mayors in New York City. Ain't no state that's safe. I don't believe in that. Not at all. Because you have enough people, you have enough cities, blue cities, that make a red state seem blue. But every state's a red state. It's just, do your cities turn out? We've got however many days to make this work. And it's just the work has to be explaining to people. The conversation about who's going to be the nominee, that's above our pay grade. We don't get to decide that. We're not delegates. We're not at the convention. We're not donors. We're not elected officials. So a lot of this is just like fun prospecting as people who care about politics. But at the end of the day, you and I, we don't have a say. Joe Biden's not going to check in with me and you and be like, hey, Grace, what do you think? Like, as many op-eds as I can write about who should and shouldn't be on the top of the ticket, nobody's going to look at my little MSNBC.com op-ed and be like, ooh, Christy Greer thinks this. Let me change what I was going to vote as the frickin' secretary. So what we can focus on is explaining to people the importance of big D Democratic politics, where it's like, it doesn't matter who's on the top of the ticket. It could be a lawn chair and a blanket. You need to get your mind right and think about all of the policy issues, because now it's party versus party. So I'm not actually voting for an individual in the Democratic Party. I'm voting for the Democratic Party because that is important to me, as problematic as they may be. And let's be clear, because Democrats have been ignoring this conversation.
Here it comes.
I always like to say, let's be clear, because of Barack Obama. Let's be clear.
Let's be clear.
Democrats have liked to ignore the fact that most times people go to the polls for pocketbook issues. That is what has traditionally in political science literature, that is why people go to the polls. Unfortunately, Joe Biden is in the unfortunate position of people putting all these different things together and realizing these are pocketbook issues that I care about. International relations, there's usually been very little daylight, and there still is very little daylight between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to international stuff. But there are a lot of young people, and there are a lot of people of color who are saying, hey, this money that we're spending internationally to do things in our name that I disagree with is not just a moral conversation, it's a pocketbook issue. And so we can't ignore the fact that there are a lot of folks who are just like, I don't like what you're doing abroad, spending my tax dollars to do this or not do this to certain people in various countries. And so that's why I'm not voting for you. So that's something I hear a lot with young people and Black people and people of color and people who've come from countries that are war-torn countries. Explaining why they should still vote for the Democratic Party. And they're like, again, you hear the lesser of two evils. They're doing the same thing, blah, blah, blah. Why am I going to do that? If I vote, I'm going to skip the top of the ticket. And it's like, do you think the Republican Party cares any more about what you care about? And it's, yeah, but I'm not voting for the Democrats because they're behaving like Republicans. That is true. But there are all these others. So are you going to be a single issue voter, right? Or are you going to look at reproductive rights and immigration and education and policing and voting and the border and the environment? Like, I'm trying to walk people through the 30 other top ticket policy issues. In addition to Ukraine and Gaza, which a lot of people care about. A lot of people care about it. And I think the Democrats, but we're doing all these amazing other things over here. So even if you disagree with us over there, then you'll come around. And that's not necessarily the case in this particular issue. And I don't feel like modern presidents have been penalized in the same way as Joe Biden. Like, people were like, I'm not voting for Obama because of Guantanamo. You promised to close it. You never did. But he's not being held to
or perpetuating. I would argue the better example would be continuing the war in Afghanistan.
That part. And obviously Republicans are never held to the same standards. So I would say the work is listening to people and recognizing that their grievances are real, right? And their feelings are real, but walking them through all the other things that matter, right? And what do you think a second term Donald Trump presidency would look like versus a second term Joe Biden presidency for you and your specific life? And I think that's the piece that's been frustrating me, where all these people are like, oh my God, I can't believe Trump's going to win. It's if you don't do your part, he absolutely will. And it doesn't seem like you want to pull your boots up and put your gloves on and get to work. I think a lot of people are just more interested in being like, oh, I can't believe it. And then you just want me to work for the next several months, doing the best I can, educating the future of America, making sure they're registered to vote, making sure everybody in my orbit is all together, but you don't want to do your part. And that's the piece that's really been frustrating me, because I'm already tired. And I'm cleaning the house and you're sitting there with your feet up like, oh, isn't this terrible? This house is a mess. Yes, it's a mess because you're not helping.
Love it. Love it. Okay. You probably have something British to do.
Yeah, I have some edits to do.
Probably have some kind of tea to make or some British thing to eat or drink.
I'm doing lots of tea, darling. And lots of pubs.
You really are changing and before our eyes, right?
Welcome to my flat, darling.
Do they have birds? They have birds there?
Oh my gosh, I'm going birding tomorrow. There's some green parrots that fly all around the city. That's great. There are 8 royal parks that used to be private and now they're public. So
more about the green parrots? More about that? Why?
Yeah. You know how Los Angeles has those blue parrots that are all around? If you look up, it's like parrots. Wild parrots are all over Los Angeles.
Did not know that.
You can hear them too.
Did not.
Yeah, it's like the story is like someone had 2 parrots or something that they let loose, and now Los Angeles has like a gaggle of wild parrots. I had
no idea. I would just think they would be targets for some kind of other bird.
Their bird diversity is wild. Their whole ecosystem. I heard this. I've been trying to walk as much as possible just to get reacclimated to the city and try and stave off these pounds because of all the Lebanese food that I'm eating every day and going to the pubs and all the things. So the sound of a parrot is the sound of a parrot. Some of you may recognize. And I look up and I see these green parrots chasing one another. And I was like, get out of Dodge.
No way.
And then you have your massive park systems. So I notice every time I'm walking close to the parks, I start seeing a lot more bird diversity.
Right.
No surprise there.
Send me pictures. Thank you very much for talking to me today while you're in London. I greatly appreciate you joining me as a really good things that you said and to hear. And I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and you have a great audience, so hopefully they'll hear what I'm saying and come up with a plan.
Yeah, you might have
time.
You might have to stop by one of our hangouts and do some
heavy lifting.
I want to ask
Black lady. Hey, Black lady, come do more heavy lifting for me, please.
Yeah, I realized as I was asking you to do what I was asking you to do. But I think the community is important, and you're such a voice of reason people look up to. And so, yes, I am asking you to be
anything
be who you are for us. Yeah, thank you.
It's on the record. Anything for pizza.
There you go. You heard it, everybody.
Yeah, life is good.
Life is good indeed. About just a few hours after I wrapped my conversation with Dr. Christina Greer is when the announcement came that President Biden was stepping down and supporting Kamala Harris. So I'm looking forward to talking to her again about that and so much more. Hopefully you appreciated that conversation. Always love talking to Chrissy. She pulls no punches. She's so brilliant and thoughtful and funny, and I just love her. So hopefully you did as well. Let her know on Twitter. Let me know, and I will talk to you tomorrow, if not sooner. Check us out in the Discord channel where the conversation is always going on. You're never alone if you're a member of the stand-up community. Thank you so much, you bumblebees. John Carroll taking us out as he does every day.